Hello, friends. Welcome to the Veterinary Life Coach Podcast. Today, I have a wonderful guest for you. His name is Andrew Dewar. He's the co-founder of 5 Year You. He's a serial entrepreneur, a former accountant, and a certified Theta healer, which he's going to tell us about. His dedication to financial freedom led to national recognition when he achieved the remarkable feat of paying off his mortgage in just 6 years. Boom, I love that. He's a personal development enthusiast and a passionate advocate for the power of self-improvement, which you all know I love. Welcome to the podcast, Andrew. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me here, Julie.
I really am happy that you agreed to come on.
Oh.
So the first question I always ask everyone is to tell me their story. And basically just whatever you want to tell us, how you got to where you are today.
So my story is probably like a lot of us have experienced, but it's unique to me, so I'll happily share it. I grew up in a home with an autistic sister, and my life was very different. So through my life, I was raised in a very unsafe environment because of her. She was very erratic and whatnot. So when I was a very young age, I figured out that I had to be safe. And I just kind of figured that out. And I, decided in grade 5, somebody said being an accountant made a lot of money. And I thought, well, I like a lot of money. And I just kept filing these things away. And for all of you listening out there, you really should check in more than once in grade 5 when you make your career decisions, because it's not the best basis for
a lot of us made it then, right?
Yeah, it's crazy when you talk to people, and a lot of people are like, yeah, that's when I decided I wanted to be this. And, and then you kind of get to that point in life where you're like, yeah, this isn't, what happened to me is that I lived by everybody else's rules because it made me feel safe. So, you get done with high school, you ask what's next, like, well, go to university, get a good job, get a wife, have kids, get the house, pay off the house, get the cars. And I'm a doer. So I took that to heart, and I went really, really hard at it. And, we paid off our house, and all these things happened. And I like to say I won the game of life when I was in my 30s. I had everything I ever needed. And I was getting sicker and sicker inside. And I was going, like I would eat foods and they wouldn't sit well with me. So I started doing, acupuncture was the one that started to actually help finally. And we were trying to figure it out through the pandemic and stuff like that. And then what happened was, I went down to a water diet, and it was basically still getting sick. And that's when she told me, sometimes when this happens, it's your head and your heart disagreeing. And I had like this watershed moment where I kind of recognized that I hadn't been living for me. I'd never lived for me. And I had to then go back into the emotional garage that I had been stockpiling all my moldy emotions in for the last 40 years and face them. And so she suggested that I try EMDR, which I had no clue what that was. That's eye movement desensitization reprogramming, where in an hour time, you can let go of some pretty big things. I think it was used for PTSD in the beginning, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, so I faced all this stuff, and then, I would walk out of one session feeling like I had just unpacked, a whole garage worth of emotions. And other times I'd walk out and I would need to sleep because it was just because I unpacked a whole bunch of, trauma or emotions in my life that I hadn't faced. And that kind of got me to realize that I don't have to sit and talk about emotions for hours a week on a couch for 30 years while I deal with this thing, and hopefully it changes. And that had kind of been a big part of my resistance around all that stuff. Not that there's anything wrong, but there's definitely a place for it.
Right.
But as an accountant, I'm like, well, I don't want to waste my time. I'm using air quotes on that, and as I started to do that, as I started to be true to myself, the path sort of just kind of opened up. And it was somebody then suggested, well, have you tried Reiki? And I said, no, I don't even know what that is. And like, well, it's, they do stuff with your energy, and yeah, I think it would be good for you. And at this point, I'm just kind of, I'm an accountant living in the 3D, not understanding this, what's going on internally. I kind of figure like emotions are this, uh, I had two emotions. I had good and bad. How are you? I'm good. How are you? Well, I'm bad, but still gonna tell you I'm good. Now I've got the
Right.
whole feelings wheel in my
The whole
vocabulary.
range.
Yeah. And life is much better that way when you can kind of name it. So I went to this first Reiki session, and she said, you have these your sacral chakra, which is kind of your life force energy, is been in a cage, was the visual I got. So we freed it. And just so you know, you might feel a little tired after this because it's a huge release of energy. And my accountant brain kind of looked and said, thank you very much. I'm not buying
I
into
don't
it.
believe this.
I'm not buying into this. And
Right.
that was Saturday at noon. Well, I went home and I fell asleep, and I didn't wake up till Monday morning.
Wow.
So I was like, that kind of got me to realize that there's a lot of changes, a lot of things that we can't see that exist. And I got really curious on it. And so she's actually suggested that I try theta healing. And then again, what's that? And
Right. That's what I don't know. I need you to explain that to me.
yeah, so theta healing is using power of creator to God, universal life force energy, chi, whatever you want to label it, to help somebody heal through an issue. And that can be an emotional issue, a physical issue. Most of the things that I have found in my body are the result of trapped emotions, trapped feelings, things I haven't dealt with. And so I went to this theta healer, and she's like, what do you want to work on? I'm like, I really don't know why I'm here. So
I have no idea.
I have no idea, but here I just keep showing up at these appointments with no plan, no anything, but here we are. And she said, well, what issues on your mind right this second? I said, I've paid off my house. I've done all the right things. I've never really felt abundant. Like there's always just been a scarcity mindset in me, and I would really love it if I could release that. So they do a process called digging for beliefs, and it's kind of like, where do you think this comes from? What is involved in it? And you kind of dig to your root cause. And for me, it was very much a generational thing. So I kind of looked at it and I was like, okay, I have this issue that isn't my issue. It's literally been handed down generation to generation. And here I am just living with it, not really knowing. So we released this, replaced it with, worthiness and feelings of abundance. We use muscle testing in theta healing to kind of to determine whether there's an issue there or not. So a lot of times, if I'm to ask someone, like, do you know what love is? They'll go, oh yeah, I love my cat, or I love this. It's like, but do you love yourself? Oh yeah. And then you test for them and they're like, no. And it's because they haven't ever felt true love. They've always just felt this label of love, but they don't necessarily know what the feeling of like that pure compassion love is. And there's usually worthiness aspects and a whole bunch of other things around that. So um, what short story long, a couple of months later, while a little bit of integration and stuff, and I win a trip to anywhere in the world and $1,000 spending money where I couldn't win a 50-50 draw if I owned both tickets, like it's just the way it was. And here I am, like things just started to change. And then, I live in Winnipeg, Canada, and I do all my sessions online. And I walked into this little store, and the lady that does the training was doing her last rounds of training, and so I signed up for them and started doing it. And the helping I've been able to do with people and to help them heal has just been so rewarding that it's become my life mission to help heal and love as many people as I can find that are
Love
willing
that.
to change.
Yeah, that's a great mission.
Thanks.
If more people had that mission, it'd be a better world, right?
I think so. But I gotta walk the walk and talk the talk for me to do it. So and even for me to come on an interview right now and say that is a big thing. It's a big step because the old version of me, like the 5 year version of me 5 years ago, I didn't have any of these plans. I was kind of I was done. Not in a bad way, but I was just like, I got nothing. I'm not wanting for anything. It's basically, save up for the annual trip and wait till the kids are out of school and all that stuff. And where I am now, there is not a single, besides this body that I still have inhabit, not much is the same. And it hasn't been a straight line, but I know I'm living my purpose. And what I've seemed to notice is that when you get living on purpose, the things around you change. And I see so many of us living from the outside in rather from the inside out. And that's what we do in our program at 5 Year You is we help you discover your soul's purpose so that you can start living a meaningful life. I feel that most of us are living life accidentally. And when you discover your purpose, you can live life on purpose. And there is a very big difference than that. So
Yeah, I love that. Well, you started out talking about how this all started from physical
yeah.
symptoms. Can you talk a little bit about that relationship between, because I've been through similar things with, physical problems that turned out to be nothing. And so
Right.
then I realize it's stress related or anxiety related. Can you talk a little bit about that for people that haven't quite made that connection yet for themselves?
Well, the first time I made that connection was Louise Hay, who in the 80s, she published a book called You Can Heal Your Life. And it was kind of like one of the big quintessential, people would call it woo, but it's like new age type things. And she has like just this long list of, if you have a pain here, it can be this. And the affirmations are that. So it's like if you have like a sharp sinus pain, that can be triggered by a particular person, place, or event. And it might be I'm trying to remember what it is, but I think it's like you are safe is one of the big ones. A lot of our body comes from being stressed out from not feeling safe. So to get a little more open, my sister, I was my sister's protector when we were kids. Nobody knew about autism in the 80s like they do today.
Right. Yeah.
And, like they kind of, somebody had pointed out, like, when you were different like that, you would have been institutionalized not too soon earlier. But
Right.
here we are, trying to raise this girl. I say we, it's my parents. But I took on that role of my sister's protector. And then when I was 12, 13 years old, she decided to pick up a rock when we were at the cabin, and she came after me and she tried to kill me.
Wow.
And it was like it was unprompted, it was nothing else. And then that created 2 years of her trying to basically attacking me at any given point without just reason or cause. Like I could not even say anything. And, middle of the night, she could come downstairs and throw something at me. And,
Wow.
so I literally slept with an eye open. And, there was a point where I was sleeping with my feet against the door. And my dad was too, because it was just trying to keep me safe. So now, when you grow up with that as a teenager, you don't know any different. You don't know what
Right.
anybody else's life is like. This is what I would call
You're
my normal.
normal. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that fear, that needing to be safe really got stuck in my body. And I've done a ton of work on it the last couple of years. But even still, like it's a process of releasing this need to be safe. And it's not even that I'm like, from a different perspective, I've always been safe, but the story I told myself around it is different.
Right.
And so, but those emotions get stuck in our body, that fear, that resentment, that guilt, that distrust, we harbor that, and we harbor it with a brain of a 12-year-old. The 12-year-old me is thinking, I did something wrong. I'm not worthy of being loved. I can't protect myself. I can never be safe. When you're that age, when you're going into teenage years, your house is supposed to be your safe space. And I didn't have that. And I grew up in the murder capital of Canada, and like, not something you are necessarily proud of, but the outside of my house didn't feel too safe from the new stuff. It's not like people were like walking around with guns in my neighborhood or
Right.
anything like
Right.
that. But, like this
Heard about
whole
it.
yeah, this whole culture around me is like unsafe. And then I go home and I feel even less safe. So that was a big thing. And I would notice that I was always tense and I could never relax. Like I don't even know if I relaxed in my sleep. But then, you'll start feeling that. You'll feel that tension in your neck, in your shoulders. We all know, we all experience this stuff and we'll think, oh, it's just this. But there's underlying subconscious things that you're telling yourself because you've been telling yourself so long that you don't hear them anymore, and what our body is doing is really keeping score, and it might be keeping score from parents' beliefs, grandparents' beliefs, all these other things. So it's been a wild ride discovering all this stuff and helping people with it and the changes that people have when you start to change your internal view on things, your energy, as we call it, around a particular person, place, or thing, your whole world can change. And like we're talking in days, not months or years. It's You can change very, very quickly if you're ready for it.
Yeah. And I think people don't hear that message often enough, that they think they're stuck. They think
Yeah,
there's something damaged about them. They think they've had a unique upbringing like you did that
yeah,
can't be overcome. Um, and that, that's one of the reasons I do what I do is when you learn that a lot of this stuff is workable and it
yeah,
can be changed in many, many different ways, right? With therapy or coaching or what
yeah.
you do. And there's so many ways, and that it's possible to live a better life. That's exciting.
It is. It's the more we discover about this stuff, the more I'm learning. The potential for healing just is growing exponentially. Whereas, I'm not against any I'm kind of like, if the right thing comes to you at the right time, that's, I think, what I would sum up my experiences in life. And just like if somebody had told me about Reiki when I was 18 and having to take, Alka-Seltzer and Tums every day, I probably wouldn't have bought into it. I was
Right.
really into personal development and stuff, but just my mind
Not
wasn't
that.
there.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to hit a point of desperation or a point of like just readiness to be exposed to that. And like they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Well, that's what happens a lot of the time. And when we go through like the medications and all these things, there's just the right thing is happening for you, but I think part of it is just understanding that you're never stuck and you have to maybe see yourself as that little child that maybe needs to be cared for a little more than it got then and is still getting now. I know we're all adults. I know we're like, well, we're busy with work and all these things, but there's still a little child inside of each of us that didn't get picked, like got picked last for gym or got told they were ugly when they asked the girl out for a date. But enough about me and my problems. Let's talk about something else.
Well, it's absolutely true, right? Oops, sorry. I
Yeah.
call them negative thought stories. Like we
Ooh, I like
carry
that.
around these negative thoughts that someone offered to us and we believed it. So we kind of squirrel it away. And I call it the Chihuahua brain, that part of your brain that's, automatic.
Yeah.
And it just kind of controls you from the shadows and you don't even know it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a perfect way of describing it. I think I think we all have uh, a journey and we're all overcoming things. And I think sometimes when we talk about these things openly and honestly, people can hear this and go, wow, this is really bad for them, but mine's not that bad, so I don't need to worry about it. But
Yes.
the reality, and that was the story I told myself. I was like, well, I didn't lose a sibling, I didn't lose parents, I diminished my own problems, and that was a worthiness issue. And that's what I see a lot with people is that they don't think they're worthy to begin healing.
Oh,
And
I love that. Say that again.
people
That was a
don't
good
think they
line.
are worthy to begin healing. And
Yeah.
I've never said that before. And that's kind of the stuff that comes out when we talk is there's just this outcry of, people going, well, I don't want to use up somebody else's resources. There's a lot of people out there, myself included, that I want to help people heal. The world's a better place with this. We are just desperately hiding in the shadows, going asking for somebody to come and lend us a hand, but it doesn't work like that. The hand's always there. You have to decide that, you know what, I'm gonna step into the light here, and I'm gonna treat myself the way I deserve to be treated, which is probably the way you treat everybody else already. We treat
Exactly.
everybody better than we treat ourselves. So when you can come in and go, you know what, I'm worthy of healing. I am worthy of honoring my choices, my values, and not sacrificing them for anyone else. That's a big step. And whether you don't do anything else but that for a year, that's really, really big to kind of go, I'm going to honor my preferences because I didn't do that. And it wasn't anybody's fault. It was my way, it was my 12-year-old version of keeping me safe. And when you kind of see that and you realize like, wow, it's literally killing me. And there's nothing, medicine is not helping. It's not food. Nothing's working. There's some internal work that needs to be done. And it doesn't need to be super fast. It can be depending on the type of person. Um, but it's such a great step to take for yourself because don't you deserve like, didn't you come here to live your best life and put forth your best energy? I think most of us do, but then we kind of get beat down along the way. So, there's always that hand reaching out for you. You just got to learn to give yourself permission to grab it.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that I hear often is um, people don't realize the thought is that they're not worthy. It's more they just don't, they they think they're alone. They
Yeah.
think they're the only one that feels this way, or the only one that's having this problem, or the only one that needs therapy, or the only one, like they don't want to admit that they're human and every single person, I would guess, on this earth is struggling with something.
I'd agree with you. If we ever find the person that's not, I would love to meet them.
Exactly.
Uh, you're right. Like I think as a guy, I was always very sensitive. I've been labeled too sensitive, which is my superpower because that's how I can heal the way I have.
Right.
It's also helped me to go through a lot of painful things, a lot of different things. Is that when somebody comes to me with a problem, I can go, I know what you're feeling, not I read about this. This is sadness and you need a
Right.
lollipop. Like, I'm being simple here, but
Right.
it's when like, yeah, I know that sadness. I know what it feels like for your heart to break or for you to feel like you can't start crying because it may never stop. I know those fears. And when we open up to people. I mean, like, let's face it, you and I have known each other for 41 minutes at this point, and you know more about me than I shared with, a large group of people in my life over the last 30 years, mostly because I wasn't ready for it. But I
Right.
also knew, sharing with the wrong person, it was going to do me more damage than good because if you share with somebody that if and goes like, I'm feeling sad and you're in in my case, like a hockey room, dressing room with a bunch of guys, that is not the place that your feelings are going to be
They're going to be a little
received.
uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, part of it is just knowing that there's a time and place and finding the right people is a big part. I think that's part of the issue too with finding the right modality, the right person, because there's a lot of different healers out there. There's a lot of different therapies and counselors, and there's so many people out there that are desperately wanting to help. And it's kind of hard to sift through them. That's why when you get to come on a great podcast like this and kind of share, maybe somebody hears it and goes, I like this person. I like Julie. I like Andrew. I want to work with them because they seem to be legit rather than, you know, some people that might not be doing it for I won't say the wrong reasons, but not all of the right reasons.
Right. Well, and I'm a big proponent when I talk to people like you that are vulnerable enough to share all that, that relates to people that are feeling like they're alone.
Yeah.
If someone has a similar story to yours, they're like, "Hey, yeah, I've got it all going on, but I still don't feel right." something's
Yeah.
wrong, but on the surface, I look great. Got my house paid off. I've got the job, whatever, and it all looks good on the surface, but something's not right, inside. Just hearing that story from you might help somebody say, oh, okay, now I get it. There's not something wrong with me.
No,
There's something that's a human condition that I want to improve and I don't know
exactly.
if you'd call it fix. I
A
don't like
heal
that
would be
word.
heal's the term
Healing.
I usually
Yeah.
go to, is because usually there's something from our past that we just need to heal. And and it doesn't have to be it's not really the worst thing that you may have experienced. It might be something before that and you just can't remember from, because this one experience is just so prevalent in your mind that you're like, no, the actual real experience is when I was 3 and I got left at home by
That's
myself
how
and I
it
thought I was
started.
all alone. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And but like the traumatic event is the one that you remember, but it might be uh the block before the actual event. So, and again, it doesn't have to be this long drawn out process if you're ready for healing. I think a lot of times we're afraid of what's going to happen. And yeah, like your life can change a lot. I'll be a little more vulnerable, like, you know, recognizing that I had not been true to myself because I didn't know myself. I'm at 44 years old, realizing like I don't know who I am. I've been married and with the same person for 20 years, and they don't know who I am. And it's not fair to me to be with this person. It's not fair for me to just keep staying and keeping the thing going because this person's a beautiful, wonderful person, but I'm not that right. I can't learn to be who I am when I'm trying to be the old self. So,
Yes.
and that's not necessarily the case for everyone. A lot of people have good growth partners and whatnot. And, everybody's going to be different, but that change part can affect us. And, it's really hard to let go of the rope you've been holding on to your whole life to start your next journey because it keeps you tethered to home. But when you let go of it, when you give yourself permission to go live a life that uh, is based on your choices and your preferences, then things change, and you start to. I can't. I'm trying to keep like religion and all the woo woo energy stuff that people talk about out of it. But what I do know is this: when you set an intention, when you show up in the world and you say, I matter. I have preferences, and this is what I want, and I'm gonna stay true to them. Life changes around you, and it changes really fast. In my case, my head's spinning sometimes.
Yeah.
I often joke. I'm like, it's like it's literally not even well, yeah, about 2 years ago that all this started for me, and the days are long, but the years are really, really short and fast.
Yes.
So I'm finding myself like, feeling like, oh, it's taking so much time. And it's like, you hid stuff you for 40 years in your emotional garage and you've unpacked them so fast and so quickly. You know, I'm just grateful it's not taking 40 years to do that, the healing part of it. But I'm very grateful for the path and that I chose to stay true to myself because the universe is kind of showing up and going, okay, phase, here's the
Here we
next phase.
go.
Here we go.
Hang on. It's going to be
Yeah.
a ride.
Yeah, it's going to be a ride, and it's amazing. It's amazing. It's fun. It's life. And I think that's the part that I wasn't ready for. I wasn't ready for the contrast because I was so desperately needed to be safe that I didn't want to have highs or lows because, it
Because
just
they're scary, right?
because they're scary. Yeah. But now when I have a low, because we all have them, it's very normal and natural. I remind myself that the only reason why you're feeling this is because there's an equal or opposite greater feeling coming your way. And that is
Mm,
nice.
I
And
love that thought.
it really does help you in like the moments because, our emotions get stuck in us, they come out. So, and often for me, the way they get expressed is through crying. And when I cry, I just kind of accept that I see it differently than I did a couple of years ago. And I think a lot of guys, we view it as a weakness. And it's like, I'm not tough enough. I'm not this. And it's like, look around. Most guys are getting prostate cancer way too early in life. They're resenting who they are. They're doing all these dangerous lifestyle things that are hurting their bodies because they're not willing to face this one thing or let their emotions out. It's not always the case, of course, but this is what I'm seeing.
Common, yeah.
Yeah. And when you let your emotions out, when you let it flow, it's not stuck in you anymore and you feel better faster. So, yeah, if you start crying, you are going to stop. First one might be a little longer than you want it to be, but it gets faster and faster. And now, like, like if I feel something, it comes up, it goes out, and I know there's better things going. And that's a big part. It's just not letting those emotions stay stuck in you for a lifetime.
Yeah. So I read on your website, I think it was a little bit about you talk about maybe overcoming obstacles with grit. I think that's the word.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts about that? Because, I kind of think I know where you're going to go, but what does that mean to you? Like, how do we overcome our obstacles
I
if we see something, in the way of what we want?
so obstacles are there to sometimes test your resolve and other times to direct you to where you're supposed to go. And
Okay.
and I really wish I had a flow chart in my accountant brain that's like, when this happens, that means go the
Do
other
this.
way,
Yeah.
but I think like here's a good example for grit. So I submitted a book proposal and I was really like, all the kind of things were lining up. A lot of like strange coincidences happened. And I'm like, I really don't want to write about this, but it seems like it's going that way. And I wrote it. And I would have passed a lie detector test thinking this was going to get received, and it didn't. And in that moment, I have a few options. I can just throw my hands up in the air and go, well, I guess it wasn't worth happening. I can look at it a little more. I like to get out of myself and look at it and go, oh, this is just like a hurdle. It's maybe something needs to change. So that grit for the obstacle is kind of coming in and going, do you really want it, or are you just saying you want it? Because a lot of us, we think we want a lot of things in life. We think we want uh we think we want a partner, we think we want a dog, we think we want cars and all these things. And sometimes they happen really, really easily and effortlessly. Other times, a little obstacle gets put in our way for a reason. Much like, you and I, the interview got delayed for 15 minutes, and because I was having all these tech
Your
issues.
computer. Yeah.
Yeah. And you asked me, like, do you want to reschedule? And in my mind, the grit part of me is like, no, we're not rescheduling. I'm going to figure this out. It's going to
No
work.
problem. We'll get it.
Yeah. And it didn't really matter one way or another, but that's what I kind of view as grit, is kind of like that stick-to-itiveness to
Yes.
a task, but while also being open to something else that's better. Sometimes we don't, and I've explained this to my kids a lot, is, rejection is protection. And sometimes when that girl doesn't say that they want to go out with you, or the boy breaks up with you, or you don't get the job you're going for, come up with the belief that something better is on its way, instead of like telling yourself all the 12-year-old 15-year-old stories that are, I'm not worth it, I
Why you're
don't.
not worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's such a perceptual positive change when you can look at things and you're like, oh, I don't know what this means, but I'm kind of excited. And I've been traveling a lot this year. And if you've traveled in the last few years, there's a lot of delays and stuff like that. And every time it happens, I have that little blip of, ugh, what does this
Yeah.
mean? And then
Anger.
I
Yeah.
switch it very quickly to think, I wonder why this is happening for me, not why is this happening to me. And when you start to view your life as the for me happening, that was
Right.
terrible grammar, but you know what I'm saying. When you look at life as things are happening for you, you get curious and excited, and obstacles are just these cool things that might be leading you somewhere different, rather than these things that are telling you to stop. And I think a lot of us, when we hit that first obstacle, we stop because we think we're supposed to get it right off the gate, and or out of the gate.
Or that
And
it's supposed to be easy or
yeah, and it's not. It's supposed to be a challenge, but that challenge can be fun, and that's part of it. I think that's a big part with goals too, is that when we goals are great, but goals are only roads, should only be like kind of markers on the way to the life that you, or to being the person you really want to be. And so many of us look at goals as like this be all end all thing. So it's just kind of having a different view, a different approach to life as a whole. Because if you're sitting here listening to this podcast and you're happy, great. Chances are you're not. And maybe,
we don't want you to know, but
yeah,
it'll turn up eventually.
yeah, and that's okay. I mean, chances are you don't listen to like life coaching podcasts and listen about growth stuff unless you're kind of thinking maybe there's
Interested.
something
Yeah.
that needs to change inside of me. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It just means that there's a part of you that's probably curious about a different view on life. And that's why you go outside of your circle to a podcast or a different group of friends or whatever to see these people that are going, I have positive expectation in my life. And that's way better than living in safety and, negative fear for all the years before that. Yeah, it's an adventure and I'm kind of white knuckled at points, but that's my old self still kind of letting go of all the safety measures that I had in place mentally.
Yeah. I like what you said about traveling because the last few years, I used to be a little bit more reserved and afraid of like going out of the country. I traveled a
Mhm.
lot in the US, but I decided that I was going to push myself out of my comfort zone and start doing that. And it really does. It like opens up, it frees you up a lot when you start to take on, I mean, it's small risk to travel, right? There's small
Yep.
risk,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
in your brain, sometimes it feels big and just taking those risks and how much reward comes from it.
And I think you say it so well when you're like your brain makes it to be this big thing.
Mhm.
And in the this year so far, I have missed flights, been bumped off flights, had flights delayed. I slept on like three chairs in the Toronto airport in
Which
January,
is miserable.
which is not
Not
advisable, but
fun. Yeah.
but through all of it, it's when you come up, I mean, and yeah, sleeping in an airport. I mean, I'm 46 now, and like sleeping in an airport, I'm still the 12-year-old kid going like, what happens if something happens?
Right. What if somebody steals my wallet while I'm sleeping or something,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Anything that's a what if.
Yeah, the what if it's there to protect you. That's your
Right.
amygdala going, like looking for the tiger in the bushes, even though, not a lot of tigers in Canada.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, when we look at these things differently, when you're like, wow, what an adventure, what a story this is gonna make, what a neat life I'm getting to live. I don't know, to me that's way better than, looking for a reason to complain about it
I
because
love it.
yeah. And
That's
that literally was my thought. I'm like, this is just gonna make a good story at some point.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was on a trip with my kids last week and we were on a like in a van on a tour, like it was an all-day tour. And we
Okay.
had this guy on the van that was so obnoxious and so annoying. And I got angry like the first hour. I was like, well, this guy just stop it. We're all on this tour. It's not all about him. I started getting mad. And then I kind of shifted it to think, oh, this is going to be a good story. And my kids were texting and we were laughing,
Yeah.
making fun of this guy by text. And just by the end of it, we thought this guy was the greatest thing in the world because he entertained us the whole time. But it was just taking that, emotion that I was starting to feel like this guy's ruining my trip to be like, okay, what's good about this? And what was good about it was he was just something else and we could laugh about him, and just, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's still talking, and we just laughed and laughed and laughed. So,
I love that.
yeah, it's just that little bit of a different way of looking at life that's so important.
Yeah. And I think as we get older, it can be very hard to do. So when you have a moment like that, it's such a big thing. It feels like it's a small thing in,
Yes,
a bus ride, a day bus ride,
right.
but it's a really big thing because like you're shifting. from who you are towards who you want to be. Because I'm pretty sure you don't want to be the negative person on the bus
No, I
for
was
12
going to
hours.
yell at him. Like I was getting
Yeah,
ready to tell him to shut up, like that's what I wanted to do.
right.
It's like, do I want to be that person that starts a fight on this tour? No, I don't. So how can I fix this?
That's good. I think most of the challenges we have are those internal ones. And when we're able to see it as that and go, oh, this isn't actually about anybody else outside of me, it's how I'm viewing this situation.
Exactly.
And when you can change that around and you know how to consciously do it on a day-to-day basis, wow, your life is going to just take off like a rocket because
Yeah,
there's not much that's going to be able to stop you.
I know. I love that. So what have I not asked you that I probably should?
Oh, good question. I mean, we didn't go into like favorite colors or pizza toppings, but I'm kind of incapable of small talk, as you probably found out from this. So,
No, you're great at getting all this out there. I love the way you word everything.
oh, thank you very much. Nothing's coming up. Usually something does, but I I'm trusting in the universe right now that when I'm always getting put with the right people on a daily basis. And when I talk with somebody, I approach it with curiosity, whereas I used to approach it with fear. Not too long ago, I wouldn't even talk to people because I was so afraid.
Right.
And now I just trust that the right people are showing up at the right time. And nothing's coming to me as far as what else you might need to ask. I mean, we can go into paying off my mortgage or all the parts of the journey, but I feel like we really covered a good
Yeah.
solid
Well, maybe
chunk.
we can get together again and talk about the financial end of it because I know you do a lot of that
Yeah. Uh,
talking. So maybe we could do another podcast on financial stuff if
yeah.
you think that would be useful.
I would. I think that would be good. And we can maybe the money stuff is so useful, and the money stuff is really a belief values thing too. And there's a lot we can talk about around that. And if you're willing to open up a little bit, we can get into some really fun stuff too
Oh
around all of
yeah.
it. Because
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
I think the more open we are in our conversations with people, the more authentic we are, the more we draw in the right people, with the more and more, almost more importantly, the more we repel the bad people that
Mm,
aren't aren't there. I think, and it's not that there's necessarily. I say bad, but I mean bad for me, bad for you, not necessarily
right.
bad for the collective bad. I
Right.
think I think the right people find each other. So yeah, I would love to come back on and do another
Okay.
one. I think
Well,
that'd be
we'll
great.
plan that. Um, before we end, tell everyone where they can find out more about you if you've resonated with them and they feel that connection that you can help them. Where
Yeah.
can they find you?
They can book an initial contact appointment to see how the conversation goes at 5yearu.com. There's a contact page there. There's Theta Healing to schedule something if you want to do that. Um, I'm on Instagram at 5yearu, at TikTok and
All the
Facebook.
places.
I'm all the places, LinkedIn. I'm told it's very easy to find me. So but yeah, 5yearu.com is kind of the easiest place to get a hold of me. And I respond to every email. And if you are sitting there right now in your dark space and you're going, I wonder if I'm going to just speak to you directly and say, you are worthy of healing. And once you heal, then you'll watch the people around you heal because you're going to be an example to them in ways that you can't even imagine today.
I love that. That's perfect. That's a perfect way to end.
Thanks.
Well, thanks so much for being here. It's been great meeting you. This is Andrew Dewar, Dewar, correct?
Yes, that's right.
If they're looking for you. All right. Thanks so much for being here. I'm going to take you up on having you back and we'll talk some more because I think this was really fun.
Thanks.
And we were a little delayed with the computer, but next time, hopefully that won't happen.
Yeah. I'll restart my computer earlier next
There you go. I love it. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. Have a beautiful week. Bye. Bye, Andrew.
time.